Mr. Worldwide.
So what's happening, everybody? Welcome to another exciting episode of Global Brothers Podcast. Glad to have you all here with us. It's your boy, the Dandy, my man, Big Heat. What's cracking, brother?
My brother, how you doing, man?
Boom. Yo, man, dope show today. You know, we're going to be flying high. You know what? Before I introduce this guest, I was thinking back to, White Men Can't Jump. Remember them two dudes? Willie? Come on, you know what I'm talking about, Heath? Flight and Willie.
Right, you gonna start out with that.
I was like, yo, my man look like Flight, yo, and then see him dunk, yeah, he got that Flight. Okay, let's do this. So yo,
you can't do that with JR on the call. I'm gonna hear about this one after that. You're gonna call me Flight and Willie.
With no further ado, man, yo, we got a underground legend really in the building, man. Mensah-Bonsu has played ball at the highest levels, both university, George Washington, as well as professionally all over the world, which is why we call this episode Globetrotter. And now, not even 40 years old, my man is a executive in the NBA. So pleased and privileged to have you with us, Pops. Welcome to Global Brothers Podcast.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Appreciate you for having me, man. Happy to be here.
Pops, doing a little research on preparing for this episode, man.
Mm-hmm.
Wild how things come full circle. Man, I saw you play in high school, man.
Stop it.
Bruh.
Oh, wait, the Pittsburgh Hoops Classic?
Okay, I saw you there, but I probably saw you before then because I was out in I used to coach college basketball, and I coached at a Division II university, and outside of Pittsburgh called Slippery Rock University.
Right.
When I was there, I was in Philly a lot, and there was a tournament at McGonigal Hall.
Okay.
And oh my goodness, I saw you play probably 3 games in that tournament.
Wow.
Wasn't recruiting you, of course, right? But there was so much talent because I remember Jameer Nelson was at St. Joe's at the time.
Right.
So me and him had a conversation. But I spent weeks in Philly, so I saw you play quite a few times.
Wow, that's crazy. That is a small world.
And Roland Houston is a good friend of mine. All those guys, man.
Really?
I was really connected to Philly basketball back then. I did most of my recruiting there. So.
Wow.
It just all hit me when I started doing research. I was like, wow. And then of course,
wow, that's crazy. It's definitely a small world. That's cool, man.
Yeah. So we welcome you to the show, brother. We see your moves. We see a lot of the things that you're doing. But please, you got a great story. So tell us, give us your teenage years, your adolescent years, how you started.
Oh wow. So for me, you know, I don't sound like it, but I was born and raised in London, England. And, you know, as a preteen, teenager, you know, sports was my life. And to say that, my next statement is going to surprise you. Sports was my life, but basketball wasn't high on that list. You know, I ran track, I played soccer. I got introduced to basketball at the age of 12 or 13. And you know, I had to travel about an hour after school every day just to make it to practice. And, you know, for a sport that I wasn't as committed to, traveling an hour every day, you know, out my way was going to be a tall task. And so, you know, I remember probably when I was 14, I just stopped going. Well, I didn't just stop going. My grades started to slip, and my dad was like, you can't do it anymore. You know, my homework was suffering, and, you know, my work in general was taking a hit. So, you know, I just focused on track and playing soccer. And I remember my coach who introduced me to the game, who, you know, anybody who knows me knows that he's one of my biggest influences, you know, when it comes to basketball. And, you know, he asked me if I was serious about the game, would I attend his school. He was a math teacher also at this junior high where I practiced. And somebody who's not really serious about a sport, it was an all-boys school. I was young, impressionable. I wanted to go where my friends went, and it was an all-boys school. So I was like, well, there's going to be no girls there. Like, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
And that was just my mindset back then. And coming full circle, a few years ago, it dawned on me that I remember going back to my coach and telling him my parents didn't want me to go to a school in that area. And I lied to my coach, and it breaks my heart because, he passed away in 2002 from stomach cancer. And, he never really got to see me, blossom, I would say. And so I moved here at 16 just to go to school. People think I always moved here to play basketball. I was just going to school. I ran track. I didn't play soccer as much, but basketball I played. I remember playing JV, and it was humbling because I didn't know what it was. I never experienced JV before in my life. I didn't know that that was even a thing. And my first high school game was going to be against a childhood friend in the Wild End. And I'm thinking we're gonna go head to head, match up against each other and play. And right before we get ready to warm up, I get coach calls me in the office and tells me, "Hey, here's your jersey." I was like, "This doesn't look like the varsity jersey." And he was like, "Yeah, because you're on junior varsity." And so that humbled me, but it also lit a fire in me. It lit a fire in me. It motivated me to want to overcome and try to do great things with this game. And that was one of the first instances where I allowed something negative I would receive as negative and allowed it to fuel my fire. And I remember just working hard, and obviously my body began to develop. I was getting taller. I was growing into my athleticism, and I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to and led even to my college years.
How many schools did you get recruited by? I mean, going to the Atlantic 10 is a pretty, mid-major conference. Was there was there any majors, any mid-majors?
So for me, initially, it was always low to somewhat mid-major schools recruiting me. I had a lot of A-10 schools, NEC schools, CAA schools, no real Big East, ACC, no Power 5 conferences. And it wasn't until my senior year that I committed to George Washington. But then UConn and Boston College came. The kids who only started playing basketball a few years prior, I wasn't going to be able to go to a school like that because I needed to develop. I needed to play, and I knew at Boston College or UConn, I wasn't going to get that opportunity.
Right.
So I decided to go to GW.
So out of my personal curiosity, I ran athletics in high school. What events did you run? Like, what was your go-to sport, a go-to event?
Well, the school I went to, I was the track team. So high jump was my sport. When I was younger, I always hoped and thought I'd be an Olympian high jumper. I was the 2-time state champion in New Jersey, and I did high jump. But on that team, I did 4x4. I did the javelin, the hurdles, any event that they had available and needed somebody to do, I would do it. But high jump was definitely my focus.
Let's talk about the transition from the UK to the United States culturally.
That's a great question. I think for others, or people just making a move, they'll get homesick and it'll become difficult. For me, I was so excited to come to the U.S. and obviously it's cliche, but live out that American dream. I saw what coming to the U.S. I did for my brother. He went to high school and got a scholarship to go to Washington State, and I was like, look, if I can even do anything close to that, this opportunity would have been a success to get a degree. And even if I end up back in London, it's perfect. And so, I didn't the culture shock that hit me wasn't one of the experience or just getting used to. The only thing that really was difficult for me was getting used to the education system. You know, they teach us a little differently and are on a different system in the UK, and you know, getting used to that took a semester or two. I had never wrote a 10-page paper before. You know, the school I went to was, you know, it was a college preparatory school, and these kids are being groomed from grade school all the way to when they graduate to go to an Ivy League school. And I'm coming in as a sophomore and never, you know, all this experience was new to me. So not only did I have to try and make sure I could do well in class, I had to just work twice as hard just to understand the learning system before I could even receive the information correctly. So that was the biggest culture shock for me. But other than that, I was so excited about what this opportunity was going to bring that I never allowed any like I said, any culture shock to slow me down and, you know, take me away from what I was trying to achieve.
Bridging on from that, I want to ask you a immigration question. Myself, a child of immigrant parents, like we're coming from Jamaica over to America. You have a Ghanaian background, even though you were born in the UK, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm Ghanaian back heritage, born and raised in London.
Right. So going to America, like, you know, were you on like, you know, green card signed, like, you know, by your parents, and then you went to school still as an immigrant? Like, what was that like?
So back then, when you go to a school, they provide I guess a student visa, which is essentially called an I-20. The I-20 is what allows you to come to school in the United States, just school. It allows you to come to school in the United States and live here while you're in school. And it lasts however long you're going to be in school. And once you leave, that's when you have to start working on your immigrant status. So for me, you know, when I was playing in the NBA, it was always I think it's a P1 visa. And you know, so when I went back and forth from Europe, because it was, you know, the season in Europe or the season in the NBA, the off season isn't very long. So my visitor status, you know, never expired, and I had to continually keep getting that visa. Now I'm on my way to getting my green card, and you know, it's definitely a long, drawn out process. But you know, again, for what being over here and this opportunity has presented to me, you know, it doesn't really affect me that much. Always having to run, jump through hoops to make sure, you know, I'm in good standing.
So of course, you know, the follow-up question then, with like all the talk of like, you know, build the wall and all this other stuff, like, you know, how do you feel about that as like someone that both like loves the country in terms of the American dream, like you said before, and the reality of things now that you've gotten over there and lived and worked, etc.?
Again, this country was built on the backs of enslaved people, and you know, nobody who lives here is, to an extent, is essentially, this is their home. So for anybody to say somebody else is not welcome here is crazy to me. I mean, that's what this country is based on. It's built on being not built on, or based, I should say. But this country now is a diverse country, and it's a melting pot, and people come here for that dream. You know, people come here for a better life. They say it's the most powerful and developed country in the world. People are trying to escape to that so that they can find a way to live a decent life. You know, a lot of the places where people are coming from, they don't get that opportunity. And you know, it's you know, being an immigrant myself, hearing that type of rhetoric is disheartening, because people take heed to that. People believe that, and people really play on his words when he does that kind of thing. And you know, it's just it's sad that we're in that stage in America. But you know, such is life. We just have to figure out a way to combat that.
Yeah.
You know, Pop, it's one of those things. You know, you had a busy day yesterday. We texted a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What's the feeling like in DC right now?
It's calmed down a lot, Heath. I'm gonna be honest with you. About 2.5, 3 weeks ago, it was pretty. It's hard to put it. Have you seen the movie Purge?
Yeah, yeah.
I lied to you not. I would walk down the street, and it would just be empty. And this is downtown DC. Or I'd go for a bike ride or something, and the streets would be absolutely empty in the middle of the day. And it's just so eerie to see that and to experience it, because now I live a few blocks away from where everything was happening.
Yeah.
You know, it's a tough experience, but again, it's necessary.
Yeah.
You know, think about the people who came before us, who, you know, our parents, our ancestors who went through, you know, slavery, who went through Jim Crow and civil rights and all that kind of stuff. Like, this is just like, it sucks that this is the case, but this is just a moment in history where that has to happen. Otherwise, the cycle is gonna keep repeating itself. You know, just think about the progression. Yeah, it may be a slow one, but the progression of Black people is slowly happening. You know, obviously 50, 60 years ago, we're just fighting for our civil rights. Then it was fighting for, you know, trying to get that equality, and, you know, we're still fighting for that, but it's progressing. We're seeing, you know, like you said about myself, we're seeing Black people in high places and, you know, and being executives and being CEOs and all that kind of stuff. We're seeing that come to fruition. Now we have to get to the point where we can all be looked at in the same light without racial bias.
Right.
And, you know, not fear for our life if we have an interaction with a cop. And, you know, it's interesting, you know, with everything going on, the way different people handle this situation, especially, you know, white counterparts or friends. I always tell, you know, my brother told me something that really opened my eyes to racism and you know, racial bias. You know, he was like, a lot of his white friends or white counterparts, they may not be racist, may not have prejudice against, you know, people of color, but for the most part, they're usually apathetic.
Yeah.
Apathetic in the sense that they're indifferent to the struggle and the plight and the difficulties that come with being of color in this country. And so if it doesn't necessarily affect them, they can't, you know, they don't really speak on it. Again, they may not see a Black person and judge them and, you know, look at them in a different way. But, you know, the apathy is something that they have to get over. Yeah. And it's funny because even though I say there's apathy, even the most liberal and the most liberal person out there could have some racial bias, as we saw what happened in Central Park with Amy Cooper. You know, she says she's from Canada, she's liberal, she's voted Democrat and this, that, and the third. And at the drop of a dime, she went to, her defense mechanism was, I'm going to call the cops on a Black man and I'm going to tell him about it. Because she knows how wrong that could go. Right. How bad that situation could be. And the fact that it was a trick, she just did it without being prompted, you know, shows, you know, how deeply rooted these things are. These are people who you think are allies to our struggle or allies to what is going on in the African American community. And just to see her do that, like, you know, I'm glad Governor Cuomo came out and said that should be made a hate crime. Yeah. When the cops are falsely called on Black people.
It's called the Karen and the Kevin syndrome, Pops. Yeah. You know, all these Karens and Kevins just, like, you know, calling cops for nothing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
There should definitely be a law, like how there's, like, you know, something called Megan's Law about child sex offenders.
Sure, exactly.
There should be a Karen's Law, like no joke, for real. Because
no, I'm there.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
I'm with you.
Like, you know, literally, she was trying to get that man's life in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Race soldiers.
Right. And she saw what was going on with that, and, you know, it's tough because, you know, we're experiencing it every day. But again, It's just necessary. Riots is the voices of the unheard, and now we're trying to be heard. And when people say no justice, no peace, you have to listen carefully to the statement that they're saying. No justice, no peace. This isn't peace. It's not going to be peaceful. I'm not saying that it should lead to looting and rioting. No, I think, some people are going to be opportunists in this situation, but this is part of it. I feel sorry for the Black businesses that lost business and had to struggle, with what happened to their respective stores. But again, think about what it's like being a Black person in this country.
Exactly.
So now it's time. The downtrodden are only going to take us so much, and now it's time to revolt. That's just where we are.
So there's definitely an absence of empathy with our so-called white allies. And they've shown through every single movement, every subgroup, that there's really no intersectionality. I sent Pop a text yesterday, and he could have definitely disagreed with it. But I have this sense of anxiety living abroad and seeing everything that's going on, and knowing that those race soldiers are stockpiling guns and really positioning themselves for a lot of harm, and they're already harming us. So when I see people out there walking the streets without any type of protection, there's a gob of people. I think it's I just get a little leery and afraid that something can happen. So I've had a couple people, even my own family, I tell them, stay in the house for right now. So
I hear that, Heath. I definitely hear that.
Get out there, and we need to be out there, and we do have a strong warrior class of young people. But I was telling Marlon today, and I told my friend Emmy, who's on, that there was a quote by Chris Hedges, who's like some socialist, professor guy. But he had a great quote. He said, "The revolution cannot be fought if you have a family." And our warrior class is doing a really good job, both nationally and internationally around the world. But there's people like Pops and a couple other people, like, my son or some other people. I'm like, sit this one out. So that's just my thoughts.
No, I hear that. I definitely hear it. And, I'm mindful and weary of it. And, I think in this country, you get desensitized to tragic events happening. Yeah. And it just becomes, you wake up in the morning, oh, there was another shooting. Like, what else is new? But again, I hear exactly what you're saying, Heath, but I always think back to, the civil rights era, or even when, our ancestors were going through slavery. Like, yeah, if not us, then who, and I'm a very vocal person in that regard, but at the same time, just seeing this continually happen and understand that I'm a man with a son and, I have daughters too. Like, again, it's often people are like, what are you going to say to your kids in 20 years when they ask you, what did you do? And, there's ways to do it. There's definitely ways to protest. I just felt like, I haven't been at the front lines, but, when our organization and the players led it, especially me being so pro-player, I definitely wanted to support. And yes, there were definitely, there's a bunch of NBA players and WNBA players out there. They were not going to let anything happen to them. So I just stayed close to them. But it was, I can see the tensions and everything building up, though. So you're definitely right in that regard.
Yeah, it's interesting. Regarding the NBA players, you yourself took psychology as a major in university. Mm-hmm. And how do you think that, like, the psychology of just like the events weighs on sports players, particularly in the NBA, like being a majority Black league? Even more so than the NFL. Like, pretty much everybody in the NBA is Black. How's that buzzing around like the industry?
I mean, it's just look at what's going on right now. Half the players want to come back and play, and a portion of the players are concerned that coming back to play could be distracting from this movement. and, floating ideas about, starting their own league and just holding, the higher ups accountable. And, that shows how the NBA is looking at this, or the NBA players, I should say. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but, it's one of those situations where, as a professional athlete, you feel like, am I doing enough? Like, when even me, I retired a year when Cap, first started taking the knee, hearing why he was taking the knee and what was happening to him. I'm sure most athletes, especially ones of color, were probably felt conflicted or even obligated to, like, what are you going to do? What is your way? One guy is in the process of giving up his whole career for the greater good. And, I just look at the situation, and I get it. Whichever way athletes feel, whether it's they don't know, they want to put their foot in their mouth by speaking too emotional, or they don't know if they're doing enough, physically. And so I think that's what players are. Some players feel like, if we play, we can use that platform of the whole world watching us play basketball to continue to get to this common goal and this Black Lives Matter movement. Or some guys are going to be like, well, I don't want to have to focus on playing basketball at a time when we're being killed. But some people will say we've been getting killed for hundreds of years. The season starting now is not going to affect that. So I understand it on both sides, but definitely feel like it's difficult as a professional athlete to figure out how to use your platform.
Very delicate.
It sounds a bit like a rock and a hard place, and you're in a special position, whereas you're not that far removed. Like Mark Jackson, for instance, that's like been an exec for a long time. You're not that far removed from the player status, so like that still feels very fresh for you, I'm sure. But now you're in the front office, so like you must be quite conflicted with that.
Yeah, very much so. For me, I retired early. I guess essentially, I'm 36, and it's funny to say that. People laugh when I tell them I'm retired, but I'm 36 now, and there's guys who, when it's funny, my boy JR, who's on the call, he could tell you about this, but it's funny because when I first started, I was a pro scout with the Spurs, and I had retired only a year or two prior, and now, thank you, and now I have to write reports and do, background checks on players who I played with and against, and tell my boss why these players should be on my team. And, and the way I think, I'm like, I got to write a report on a dude who can't even guard me. And it was difficult. It was difficult at times, but, it came with the process, and I understood that this was bigger than me. I definitely still see myself, and always will see myself, as a player first. I'm just a player in the position, or one who's gone the road less traveled. I saw a league that was 95% black. Looking at the leadership and the front office, it's the exact opposite, if not more so in the opposite. And I feel like that has to change. That has to change. And why not be my boss? When I was at the Players Association, I got offered the job from the Spurs, and she was like, "You'd be a fool not to take that job. You're always telling players to get into coaching, to get into the front office, and now it's your opportunity to do so. You got to be that example that you want to see in this world." So that's what kind of pushed me to end on this side as a player.
And I feel like, and I hope to see more people like you that are taking that on, because that's what we're all asking for. We're all asking for representation. And now here you are, you actually step up and say, instead of just like, going out in the sunshine, or I don't know, like, becoming a business person in like another sense outside the league, or, you actually taken that position to say that, we do have executives of color here and that know exactly what the players are talking about and speaking for them.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting because I've always wanted to. Once I got on this side, it was like I knew this was where my purpose was or the path that I needed to go. It's always bigger than as you as an individual. And I even remember calling JR and telling him, I'm kind of conflicted and, I want to go back to play. And he's a person that, went out on his own terms. And, not he decided to do that, which I admire. But, to me, my career ended against my will. And, I've always had that void that won't be filled. But again, being self-aware and being a realist, I understood that it's bigger than me. And thinking about why these signs that were just being thrown my way. And I was like, I can no longer ignore the signs. I can't ignore it. And I just decided to continue to listen and let go and let God. Because again, obviously somebody was trying to tell me, my impact on the game wasn't going to be on the court. It was going to be off the court. And I had to accept that. So
you had a position as an NBA ambassador, right? Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I still am. They're starting the league in Africa. So
right.
Any African players who are in and amongst the NBA, they use them as ambassadors. And, being one of only 2 players of Ghanaian descent in the NBA, it just comes with the territory.
Amazing.
So, Pops, you've played all over the world, man. So many countries. Tell us kind of about, from the NBA, what that transition was like playing internationally.
So culturally, the transition wasn't difficult. Being of African descent and being born, growing up in Europe, I was always, and in my experience moving to the U.S., I was always embracing and willing to adapt to my surroundings. So it always made things easier. Now, whether I had wanted to be there is another question. If I, a couple of times, I remember when I got cut from Dallas, I was cut the same day my lease was up, and I had to move out, relocate, and then be in Venice 2 days later. That was probably the most difficult time. I remember I got to the hotel. This is 2007 or 8. Got to the hotel. There was no internet. There was nothing. There was like 2 or 3 channels in the room, and I just remember looking at the ceiling like, man, this can't be life. And that first world problems, don't get me wrong, but going from being on the best team in the NBA to now being in a part of Europe, and I don't even have a way to call my family. It humbles you, and it allows you to look in the mirror. And I remember telling myself, it took a few months being over there, but I was so consumed with getting back to the NBA that I didn't really, I want to say enjoy. I didn't really embrace the situation how I should have. Instead of trying to prove that I was an NBA player all the time, I should have just wanted to be the best player I could be, and just take life as it comes and be where your feet are. And I took that mindset. I went back and forth from the NBA in Europe, and it's funny, when I got to Russia, I always, depending on what team I was on, my experience overseas was usually a little bit more vast than or extensive than some of my other teammates. And I get to Russia and I meet JR, or we're teammates because we had met before. And, I'm starting to tell him about my horror stories in playing overseas. And he's like, yeah, well, my rookie year, I only made this, and then we only had CNN. Didn't have no internet, didn't have had like 8 roommates, because nobody could take it. And he told me he read the Bible from front to back, and twice, I think he did. And it really opened my eyes on, I'm over here in Venice, Italy, and, playing on a good team that, they paid us on time. And I'm over here complaining about stuff like that. And then you got situations where guys are not making as much money and their situations is 10 times worse, but still persevere and get through. So that from that day forward, I told myself, I'm never going to complain to that guy again. But no, it humbles you, and it allowed me to look at life and those situations differently. So it was difficult at times, but once I started to understand that I could still make a great career for myself, whether it is in the NBA or not, I started to be more comfortable and try to blossom where I was planted, and that's what it was. That was my career overseas.
Now, Flight, if I can call you Flight.
That's cool.
Now, Flight, it wasn't all bad, I'm sure, because I've seen
No, definitely not at all. Actually, it was a lot more good than bad.
Let me set it up. I've seen some amazing things that you've done with that basketball, and you kind of put like a saying on there, like, "Yo, if Vince Carter can do it, I can do it." And I couldn't think of any original dunks, so I just did all his dunks in the game.
Yeah.
And to say Vince Carter, like, that's the height of dunking, like, acrobatics without a trampoline, and you were doing it.
You know what's funny, Marlon? For me, I started this game late, and I felt like the only way I was able to keep up at a young age was I was so athletic. And, I started this game at 12, 13. It could be 8, 9 years, maybe 10 for some, after my teammates and counterparts. And it's just like I said about my schoolwork. I had to work twice as hard just to understand the system, then work twice as hard to excel in the classroom. I felt the same when it came to basketball, but I knew I was always a decent athlete. And then it wasn't until I got to college that I realized, what I possessed or what I had wasn't common. And so when I found my niche and realized what it was, I wasn't a shooter or a skill guy. I was the guy who was going to make it based on his work ethic and how tough I was. And so for me, when I got in the court, I was like, for me to have an impact on this game, I got to show my athleticism, and that's the approach I took. Vince Carter is somebody who, athletically, I always looked up to. And, felt like, when I realized I was, I wouldn't say that type of athlete, but an athlete, that was close to that level, I felt like, I could do those things. And that's how I was going to, bring entertainment to the game. And I remember JR, my teammate, once telling me, like, man, you don't have to dunk everything. And I looked at him and I was like, well, yes, you do. So, like, that's what I know. So, and that's what I was going to do. But again, this is, I knew that's what was going to get me to the NBA. So I had to make sure to play to my abilities.
I'm glad you referenced JR, and I'm glad he's on this call, because if I had a crystal ball and I had you, let's say at the Hun School or at GW or something like that, he would be a person that I would introduce you to. He wrote a memoir a few years ago, and
Blessed Footsteps.
Yeah, Blessed Footsteps. Shout out to that.
I read it.
Yeah, it was funny because you're researching you and hearing you speak right now. You guys became kindred spirits, I'm sure, easily, in Russia, because you had similar paths as far as being an underdog and just having to work extra hard. So that match right there was probably just a God-given match, just having an OG who probably had the same – you're walking in the same footsteps that he had just recently or previously walked in.
Yeah, man, it's funny you say that, man, because JR and I had crossed paths a couple times before we like officially, met or were teammates. And, I get to Russia. I'm coming from the NBA, so, obviously I'm on my high horse, and I'm realizing I'm joining, the best team in Europe. And, the organization is high level, like they take care of us. They give us apartments, cars, and, we're always was paid on time. I keep saying paid on time because anybody who knows anything about Europe knows that a lot of the time those countries, they may not pay you on time or at all. So you have to, whenever a player who's somebody who's overseas references getting paid on time, it was at least a decent situation they were in. So, I'm thinking, I'm gonna come there and I'm gonna start and I'm gonna, be the guy, and just, they're gonna feature me. But I'm not realizing this team is it's Europe, but it's stars. These guys are
loaded.
They're loaded. They're loaded. Coming in, I heard some of these names. I heard of JR. And, I heard of Trajan Langdon from Duke and played in the NBA. But some of these other guys, I was like, well, I don't know who they are like that. So I don't know what all the commotion's about. Like, just, I'm here now. Now it's time to start. That's just what it is. And it went totally different from what I expected. Yeah. And, JR always feels like he's responsible for it because they knew putting him on the phone with me was going to be enough for me to want to join that team. Because he called me. I was like, oh, damn. They called him the big guns. And I was like, I'm there. Say no more. He said, we're going to go to the EuroLeague Final Four. We're going to win. And I was like, that's all I need to know. If I'm not in the NBA, I'm going to be at the highest level in Europe. And just over the course of that season, we were, I would say we, because, even he was tested a lot too. And seeing how he handled it and seeing and knowing his path and his story, it helped me. But also let me know how human I was too, because I was having human moments often and I didn't know how to handle them. It was situations that were unfamiliar to me, especially in Europe. And, he kept me off the ledge a number of times. And when I saw him going through it too, I was like, you know what? That's an example. And he always told me never let them see you sweat. So, although I didn't fully adhere to it until a few years later on in my career, but, at the time, that I think that brought us closer. It's a talking point. We always, if we're at dinner or in mixed company, it's always funny to, bring it up because we can laugh at it now. At the time, we wasn't really finding it funny, but that experience alone, again, it's another negative experience that happened to me that I used as motivation. I used as motivation to fuel my fire. And I think I remember when that season was over, I landed and, normally we take a few weeks off to recover and, just unwind. I remember I landed and I was straight on the go. I went home and I went right to the gym. And then I played with the national team that summer and I was so motivated. I was so motivated because of that experience that I was like, never again am I going to be an experience like that and allow that to happen. And it's not going to be, and I knew it wasn't because of basketball, but I'm going to make it to the point where basketball is never going to be a question. And, it was a experience that I needed to have. When you lose, you never lose the lesson. So it helped mold me and it helped, help me go down a path that, at least on the court, that really set me off for the rest of my career.
Speaking of players that you mesh with, tell us a bit about your relationship with Luol Deng.
Yeah, and Luol and I, I've known Luol, almost 25 years now. We knew each other in London, and it's funny, the reason why we would do our lives and, our little conversations was because one day my little brother came to me and told me, hey, I'm realizing now you guys have known each other for, almost 3 decades. And although your careers have gone very different, at some point in time, it's your life and your careers always ended up meeting back in the same place. We were in London together, then we come to the U.S. and my first high school game was against, a close friend of mine. Then, he's the number 1 player in the country. I'm trying to just get a scholarship to go to college. And, his decision was Duke or the NBA. And my decision was, am I even going to get a Division I scholarship? And, I remember we met back up again. He had entered the draft after his freshman year. And finally, I had gotten to a level where I could enter the draft. And I entered the draft as a junior. And I remember coming back to him for advice on what I should do. And then again, just over the courses of our career, and then when we started playing with the national team, our bond continued to grow. And, that's why we felt like it was necessary to speak to it, because although we have gotten to the same place to an extent, our paths were very different. And, it brought us closer. And, it's definitely a thing where our experiences, it's interesting to see different experiences, especially from where we came from.
There was a game that you guys both snapped and both scored 30 plus points, and just you had I think 12 boards or something. Tell us about that game, and what was the motivation just for losing it?
You talking about the Wild myself?
Yeah. You guys had Great Britain, I think.
It was an overtime game, Pops.
I know exactly what you're talking about. It was I actually had 24 rebounds, but nobody's counting. But it was funny. That's a result of what happened in Russia. I got home and I went straight to working out and working on my game, working on my body, and I literally implementing some of the lessons I learned from JR. He was like, "Look, you woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning every day in the summer to work out. Now, I may not have gotten up that early, but the discipline and the determination was there. And all I could think about was never allowing something like that to happen again. And for those, to give you context, when we was in Russia, I'm thinking as an NBA player, I'm going to join this team, be the star, get the ball all the time, and, lead them to a final, EuroLeague Final Four. And it didn't go that way, and that was it was definitely humbling for me, but it was also infuriating. It was also motivating, and I took that pain and that aggression and I harnessed it through my work. And when to reference the game you were playing, you were talking about, we were playing in European qualifiers, and our Olympic fate was based on how we did in those competitions. Normally being the home city, you get automatic bid to the Olympics. They didn't give basketball automatic bid. We had to qualify for our own Olympics. So for 2 or 3 years, we had to show the IOC or the Olympic Committee that we were worthy of our automatic bid. And so that summer, we were playing against Bosnia, Hungary, Macedonia, and Israel, I think. And we just remember, again, every game I played in that summer was a little more motivation, a little more anger that I had. And that game right there was the epitome of it. We came in and we knew that this team was gonna have the opportunity to beat us, and if we lost, that would probably seal our fate in the Olympics. And so we just went off. He was obviously he was the offensive guy, and for me, again, like you said, I was the guy who physically felt like he could compete with anybody. And so I remember knowing that if even one of us played well, we would have a chance to win. If we both played well, more often than not, we would put ourselves in a position to win a game. So, I knew he was going to come bring it offensively. I was like, look, let me set the tone on the glass and defensively, and then show them that they're not going to stop me or us from imposing our will on this game. And, like you said, I think between us, we scored 70 points and had 40 rebounds. And, that's definitely a defining moment in our careers and in my life in general, because being able to tap into that emotion to do something like that the whole summer was new for me. And again, it was something I learned from my time in Russia, and definitely tried not to walk around with that chip on my shoulder, but I could tap into it whenever I wanted to.
Yeah. Before we head to Ghana, because I can't wait till we get there. How appreciated is Pops Mensah-Bonsu in the UK in regards to what he's accomplished?
Heath, man, you're in my head, bro. I was going to ask him, like, I'm not even trying to, like, blow your head up, but, like, I didn't even know that Great Britain had a team until I heard of Pops. Like, cause like Dream Team days, like, when, like, Jordan and, like, like, the Dream Team, like, you didn't hear about, like, Great Britain. You heard about Croatia.
Not at all.
So,
not at all. There was no, I mean, and then that's part of the reason why on the court and now as an executive, I do what I do, is because it was all about providing a mirror image to a younger generation, to show them that where we came from, we can do this. I came from London. I wasn't even playing the sport.
Right.
A few years later, I'm in the NBA. Like, this is achievable. It can be done. But trust me, it's not impossible. And now I'm trying to show the same thing in a suit and show them that this is, we can get to a higher level, not only on the court, but in the boardroom or as an executive. And in regards to what you said, I think it's a little more glaring, and I wouldn't say disheartening, but saddening to an extent that Luau Deng at one point was the most successful and highest paid British athlete we had, and we could walk down the street and nobody would notice him. And that was fine for him because he's a humble guy. He doesn't really like a lot of attention, but it shows you how the lack of support or the lack of interest in sport from the governing body. We're actually in the process of changing that, but at the same time, there were situations where you would have, Britain's most successful athlete, in a situation somewhere, and he wouldn't get the respect that he deserves, or they wouldn't let us into the restaurant or club or something like that. And it was, for me, I never look at it like what lack of notoriety or respect I get. I'm like, this guy's an NBA All-Star, African legend, and y'all don't know who he is, or y'all don't like but again, it's a culture thing. And I think it takes guys like Luau or myself to implement a foundation so that in the future the culture can embrace and celebrate guys like that. And and I remember we were going back to London, and we was in the gym, and only a few kids noticed that NBA All-Star was in the gym.
Wow.
It just speaks to, and not to get all the way into it, but it speaks to a level of discrimination and racial issues that are in the UK. Basketball is the number one played sport amongst ethnic minorities in Great Britain. It's the least funded. Yeah, wow. I'm talking.
We won't stay here, but I do want to just add to that, and it stems from my question earlier about your appreciation in the UK. We over here in Dubai, we have the privilege and the luxury to mix with many cultures, and many of our Black British brothers and sisters, we have like some really good relationships with them, and I cherish them. I value them because it's just a great feeling to talk to other melanated people from around the world. And sometimes there's some cultural collisions and vitriol and sentiment that I have to clear up with some of our brothers from around the world, even from the continent, right? Some stereotypes and things that I have to clear up. When we protest, sometimes there's like, well, why are you guys out, doing this? Or why are you guys out doing that? You have to explain to them what we're doing and the purpose. So Idris Elba, I'm not sure if you saw the clip from a couple years ago. Idris Elba had a meeting with Parliament.
Yes.
Have you seen that? Where he talked about the discrimination in the movie business.
That's part of the James Bond situation, correct?
I think it was before James Bond, actually.
It was before the James Bond.
I think it was before, but I could be. It could be around that time. Anyway, it had me, with all the conversations that we had, it had me start to think about Muhammad Ali, you name it in the USA, right? Barack Obama, and even the entertainers like the Idris Elbas, the Kevin Harts, and the Denzel Washingtons. And I'm wondering, where is that social justice warrior, that Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, coming out of the UK? Where is that person?
Well, that's a great point. I think it comes with the platform. If you have, I consider. I don't know how you deem somebody that, or how they deem themselves that, I should say. But when you look at LeBron, he's the most notable athlete on the planet. Best player or whatever, and when he says something, whether people listen or not, they hear it, but he has that platform, with whatever little platform I have, I try to speak to that. I know Luau does the same thing, but all we can do is speak to our network and our base. And again, I don't, back to my point about, going out there to support the players in the march that we did. We try to do whatever we can to help the movement along. Like, we did those chats, and it wasn't for our entertainment. It was us saying, hey, if one person watches this and learns from our experience and our travels and our path, then us having a weekly conversation has been a success. It turned out a lot bigger than that, and a lot more people, a lot more people tuned in, and now it could potentially turn into a podcast. But again, it was trying to impact somebody's life.
I love it. Yeah. I was I didn't know what it was, but when he said Pop was going live, I just jumped in and I stayed for the whole time.
Well, I appreciate that. That's good to know. But again, it's us using our platform to speak. And somebody asked me why I was so outspoken of late, and JR actually made a joke about it because he called to check on me this week. And I was like, look, if me speaking up and for my people about our struggles was going to put my job in jeopardy, then that's not the job for me. Because I'm not doing anything that's egregious, nothing that's offensive. Literally just speaking to the struggles of being Black in America, and that's it. If you put out a fact, you can't. The truth has no temperature. So again, we're just speaking to what we go through, and so I hear what you're saying about where is it, but we try. Everybody tries to be their own. Not everybody can be Jim Brown or Muhammad Ali or even Colin Kaepernick, but we can all be stars in our role and speak to that. And I think whatever platform or base that you have, you can inspire people, whether it's as little as one person or as many as thousands of people. So definitely continuing to fight that good fight, I guess.
Right. And let me clarify, I asked that question because I see the work you're doing in the States. I see, of course, all the work you did, whether it be the education you got and the university you attended, and of course, your travels around the world. But then also Luau Dang, and then there's John Boyega, and then Idris Elba's in The Wire, right? Mm-hmm. And when I saw him talk to Parliament, I was like, damn, I never thought about. And who's the Cynthia Rivos, right? She's making it big in the USA and Hollywood. So there's a lot of high-level talent like yourselves leaving the UK to to set up shop and make it in the USA or even in the continent. And I'm wondering, that's why I had to ask the question, and I'm glad you clarified that, because I was looking at the data. There's only like 1 million in England.
1 million what?
People of African descent.
It's probably, the number's probably arbitrary one or skewed one. I think there's a lot more than that over time. But yeah, I grew up with nothing but, West Caribbean or African people, my whole life, and especially in London. And, although we make up, the population is growing, the opportunities wasn't. And so again, it takes for guys like Luau, Idris, John Boyega, Cynthia, myself, to break that glass ceiling for that, and I think to do so, for the longest, just like I had to do and Luau had to do for basketball, we had to come to the US to be successful.
Right.
And then there's a term, an Adinkra symbol called Sankofa in Ghana. And it's actually, I don't know if you can see it, but that right there is the Adinkra symbol, and it means to go back and get, or to reach back and get. And, when people of color make it to a certain height or level, it's now their social responsibility. Some people may not see it that way, but I do, to reach back and bring and pull up everybody, his people.
Yeah.
The reason why, as a GM, I was so empowered to want to get to this position is because to provide opportunities for people who look like me. Again, just opportunities. I tell people now it's not a handout. Just because I am a general manager and, I can put people in positions, that doesn't mean I'm going to just put anybody there. I'm going to give you a platform to succeed, whether it's on the court, whether it's as a coach or in the front office. I'm going to give you a platform. What you do when you get into that interview process in front of the rest of my staff and everything is going to determine when our friendship is going to kick in. If you go in there, do what you have to do, kill the interview, impress everybody, then that's when I flex. And I'm like, well, okay, that's done. But if you come in there and you're not, I'm not just going to be like, I'm not going to overrule the sentiments or not read the room. I'm very sensitive to how people, how the rest of my staff evaluate situations. And I make sure that I have everybody's point of view when it comes to that. So, again, this is about providing opportunities and trying to blaze a trail for other people that look like me, so that in the future, the disparity isn't as much, and that maybe instead of it being 2 or 3 former players or former black players in the front office, it's 10, and then hopefully that number will continue to grow, and then in a few years from now and generations to come, this isn't a conversation, because it's just all these companies are out here trying to balance or have more diversity, and black people are getting put on the boards left and right. I'm about to go stand in the middle of GW campus and just walk around in a suit to be like, y'all got any more board spots open? Like, what are we doing?
You'll be vice provost tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. Again, I feel like it's our duty to get to that level and to help others give back.
I want to ask you something else about the UK before we go to Ghana, Heath. I know that's next. That's next, I promise. I want to ask you something else about the UK because when this whole thing kicked off in the States, in terms of actual demonstrating in the streets and this kind of thing, some of my British friends were telling me here, like, oh, hey, the one American that we know and maybe the one Black American they know as well. So, like the questions came to me, what's going on? What's this about? Like, why are they breaking things? And then it's like, oh, Americans are crazy. Then the very next week, it was a global thing. And then
kicking off in London, yeah.
Right, we're not innocent. We actually have blood on our hands as well. The Church of England, the Bank of England, etc., actually financed slavery and owned slaves. and all those other things.
Mm-hmm.
Now that that's all coming out and coming to light, to be honest, all of those people are very quiet right now. How do you feel like your friends back in UK and London are like, expressing this right now? Are they out in the streets? And I'm sorry, right before you answer, I want you as well to touch on this at the last point. There's a popular picture going around with a brother carrying a right-wing protester from harm and danger, protecting him from harm and danger to get him out of there before he got damaged even more. So tell us kind of just about how you feel.
It's as apparent in the UK as it is in the United States, if not more so, because it's calmed down somewhat over here. In the UK, they're still pulling down statues and still destroying any remnants of slavery or colonialism to an extent. And it's I think it's finally a time. Like, it sucks that it took somebody being choked for 8 minutes and 46 seconds for the world to become a catalyst for the world to take action. It started here, and then one person was empowered in the UK and was like, you know what, this isn't right. And man, they're out there. They flooded and the thing is, they knew all this stuff already. Those who win the wars get to write the history books. So we all know a lot of the stuff that, especially in the UK, a lot of what happened in the US and across in Africa was, was based on, England, Dutch, and a few other countries who wanted to infiltrate the African market, whether it be the culture, the people, or the resources. And it's very apparent in the UK, and people I'm getting pictures daily from friends showing that they were out there and that they were pulling down statues, or they're still protesting. Luckily it's been peaceful to an extent, and it just goes to show the mindset of us as a people to an extent, that somebody who is a right-wing protester, like someone said, you have to be a new type of racist to protest against anti-racism. Like you got to be cut from a different cloth to protest that openly anyway. And people, there's no justice, no peace. So sometimes you're gonna run into some people on our side who are gonna be like, I'm not here for it. You've seen the term that you've messed with the last generation. It's not going to be turn the other cheek. It sounds like it's a violent talk, but it's just the voices of the downtrodden, and that's all they can speak to now. And it's indicative of who we are as a people, that this guy was carrying somebody who has no reason to hate him, but uses every reason possible to do so. Somebody who hates you with a passion, you still find it in your heart to get them out of harm's way. And that picture was powerful to show that. And it'd be interesting to see how that right winger, what's it called? The right winger reacts to that. This guy essentially just saved your life. This guy who you hate for no reason, saved you, took you out of harm's way, and didn't think twice when it came to it either.
Probably thinks that guy made him look cowardly. Like, oh no, like no, I had myself. I'm good.
He was gonna get severely hurt, and that's why he pulled him out of there. And the guy didn't stop him, because if that's the case, run back in there like it's nothing. And no, it was just he was protecting you.
Sure. Yeah.
And what's funny, and it's so glaring that you see it in depictions of enslaved movies, where the biggest and strongest slave, he probably wants to escape, but he sees the house is on fire, but in his heart he doesn't want to see somebody else receive pain, so he runs back in the burning house and carries out, and saves the day and carries out the very person who oppressed him for so many years. And that's what that picture said. It said, you've been our oppressor for so long, but we still don't want to see that kind of pain inflicted on you. And it spoke volumes, man. And, you know, it'd just be crazy to see if the guy who he saved still feels that animosity, that hate towards us as a people, because, you know, that's, again, it's a learned behavior. It's a learned behavior that it's hard to understand. People say we can't understand what black people go through. It's not for you to understand that. Try understanding white supremacy. There's no reasoning behind it. No legitimate reasoning anyway.
There's health professionals who are writing, well, they're doing research right now, but they're writing a lot of op-eds and things about it becoming a mental illness, white supremacy. So they're literally going to
make. You think so, though? You think so? You think it's a mental illness? Because
what they're trying to, they think that, or they're trying to claim that whiteness as a thought process and social construct, just whiteness in general being an illness, like them having an issue, like it's the inferiority in the other direction. Like Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, she just passed away in 2015. Her ISIS papers back in, I think it was 1973, she basically said they're scared. She calls it white genetic annihilation, but they are extremely scared that their species is being wiped out. So when you talk to, when you hear Richard Spencer from the alt-right, when they're talking, they're basically saying exactly what her work was about. The world is getting a little too brown. So,
well, it's fear. It's fear. Yeah. I think, if you're just looking at as Juneteenth yesterday, and the fact that Juneteenth is even a thing, the fact that any of this is even a thing is crazy. But the fact that Juneteenth is 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, there were still enslaved people. It speaks to that, because your oppressor is never going to be like, "Oh yeah, you're free." They were
free and equal. They're not going to say you're free and equal. Yeah, no.
And so that's the thing, though. They, equal talents deserve equal opportunities. Mm-hmm. And the way they see it, we're not equal to them. We're superior to them, which is why for them to elevate, they have to push us down. Mm-hmm. And again, like I can use the basketball analogy. If I'm better than somebody on the court, I don't have to do all these other things to make sure that I'm going to win. When we go on the court, it'll just be the case. And I said it to say, if you are superior to us, then just let that be the case. Why do you have to, to use the systemic racism or implement, the 13th Amendment for us to keep us under control? Like, why is all of that necessary?
Or move the goalpost, continually move the goalpost.
Continually moving the goalpost,
Right.
In one situation, it's, LeBron James and KD need to shut up and dribble, but Drew Brees can express his political views because he has them. Like, why is it, so this is a double standard. But again, when they see, we have to be twice as good to be equal. And, looking at Barack Obama, like of all how easy it is for negative things to come out, especially on politicians, for him to go through pretty much that whole process and still in that situation unscathed, and his biggest scandal was the fact that he wore a tan suit.
Right.
like Trump, like literally his whole every week is something crazy, and no black man or even any other politician would have lasted to this long if that wasn't the case. So we always have to be twice as good just to be in the room or have a seat at the table, because it's not an equal playing field. I'm sure you've seen that video of it's like a PE class, and he was like, we're gonna play a game. If I say something that pertains to you, take a step forward. And he's like, take a step forward if you have both your parents. Mm-hmm. And it sucks, but 95% of the black students stood still and everybody else moved forward. And take a step forward if, you've never had to worry about getting pulled over by a cop, or And he's saying all these instances, these things that in life, take a step forward. If you've never had to worry about where your next meal was going to come from, if the lights were going to be on, if you were going to have food or the clothes, and like you can see what's going on, and the white students are looking back and see how far back their students are, and then he's like, "Go," and they run, and you just see the black kids just catching them, and just be they're athletes, they're all athletes too, so you just seeing them catching on their white counterparts, and he basically spoke about it was life. It was life. We're so far behind the 8 ball that we're spending our whole lives playing catch up, and you still try to hold us down, and we're still, and yes, that's why you hear so many success stories from black people, because they may grow up without a father, they may grow up in a situation where they didn't have any money, and all of a sudden, the window of opportunity opens, and they're in the NBA or the NFL or CEO.
I like what the sister said. The activist Kimberly Jones. She said that you broke the contract. You broke the contract. Yeah. So in terms of the protesters burning the city down, she's like, we don't own this stuff. It's not ours. We don't care. It's not ours. So you broke the contract. That means that we're allowed to do what we're gonna do. And as far as I'm concerned, this whole thing can burn to the ground. It was just so powerful, like how she said that, and just like the receipts that she came with, like this is like Monopoly, whereas we never get to pass go, we go straight to jail, and then you expect us to do all this other stuff. So
man, it's crazy.
It's heavy, man. Wow, I love that. I love that you don't shut up and dribble. I love that about you, brother.
Oh no, never that.
Never that. Hey Heath, man, what's up with Ghana, bro?
Hey, man, Pops, I looked for you, man. I was there, man, in December. Man, where were you, man?
I was there too, man. I was only there for 2 days, but I was there.
I saw you on Instagram. I was like, man, I got to run into this guy. And there was some people, actually some Global Brothers Podcast alums who was there as well. Shout out to Rally, McKay. But yeah, there was so many people I saw. I mean, we interviewed Akon. And then I saw him in Ghana, right? So I just knew I was going to see you. And we didn't cross paths. You said 2 days?
I think I got there the morning of the 31st and left the night of the 1st. I had a meeting and, because I'm starting an academy and I'm starting a camp. So
really,
I was meeting with, Microsoft to try and shore that deal up. And I knew not being there was going to possibly make me lose it. So I was there for 2 days.
Right. Now, where did you go for New Year's? Because I was at, and I forget the name now. It's a beach, Hotel Beach.
I was there. I ended up there too.
When I saw the picture, I said, I think I missed him because I was there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. There were so many people there. It was going to be hard to catch it if I didn't know you were there too.
It was. Yeah. So let's talk. Yeah, definitely. I'll be back in December. My visa, I got a 2-year visa, so I'll be back in December.
Okay.
Question, God willing, right? We never know.
Right.
With this COVID, you never know what's going to happen. Question, year of return, man. Give us your thoughts and thoughts about it as well as the outcome and beyond the return.
And the year of return is special.
Yeah.
And it's necessary. I think I'm all about analogies. If you look at the Black Panther and look at Killmonger and T'Challa, you think Killmonger is this villain that is just bitter and just out to get everyone. But at the end of the movie, and hopefully everybody's seen the movie, he's dying and he's like, I can help you. And he's like, no. Bury me in the ocean with my ancestors who felt like death was better than bondage. And when I hear him say that, it brings the whole movie together for me. I understand now that Wakanda is basically Africa.
Yes.
Without colonialism.
Right.
And it shows how Africa has got this great, rich land and this, this rich culture and people. And then it got this resource in vibranium that the whole world wants. It's basically what Africa was before it was infiltrated. And Killmonger is African Americans. He's felt like African Americans have had to go through Jim Crow, slavery, civil rights movement, everything that's going on, and they've been struggling over here. And then you got this rich land, and they didn't reach back and get them. So all you see is his pain the whole time, and they have no identity to an extent. How I see the year of return is it's allowing people to have that identity back, to have that rich history, that rich culture, that heritage back that they once yearned for. Because if they look at their family tree, it's going to start with a slave owner. And that's not the beginning of our history. The beginning of our history is on the motherland. And, you know, that's the best way I could put it, because I feel with Ghana opening up its borders and its arms to any and everybody, anyone of the diaspora, is letting them know that, hey, this is your land too. This is your people too. This is your history. You have to know this. You know, I went back to the slave castle there, and I see my last name is up there.
Yeah.
You know, I see it, and it's crazy to see that. This is hundreds of years ago. And that's how far back, you know, my family's name has gone, and seeing that and knowing that they were part of the people who were trying to fight off the, you know, the colonials, and it, you know, it's empowering. It's tough at times to know what they had to go through. There's some people who only knew slavery. They didn't know anything else outside of that life. And, you know, it's definitely difficult to see, but, you know, at the same time, we have to know this history, and that's what the Year of Return is providing to people, giving them the identity, excuse me, that they once lacked.
Now you have two brothers, right? Three brothers, excuse me. Were you guys able to share that together, or like have you been to Ghana together before as like all you guys are boys?
My first ever trip to Ghana was with Luau and my oldest brother. So this next time, the time I went, a few times I've gone since, we started our camp. I took my brother and my sister. So we haven't all collectively gone. I think we're going to be in the process of doing that one year. But I've been with each one of my siblings at a different time. And, you know, it's like I said, it's special. I think being there with my mom and my dad was the most special, you know, because they didn't, it's weird, growing up in the UK, they didn't think we embraced our culture. So when my mother saw me wearing traditional cloth or kente, you know, always wearing, you know, my Dinkra symbol, she was like, I didn't know. I just didn't know you really liked that kind of stuff, or that stuff meant a lot to you, because, you know, just where you grew up and everything. And I was like, no, this is like, knowing the history and knowing what it means is big for me. And you know, it's good to see my mom, you know, feeling proud that her kids are embracing their true culture. So it's definitely, you know, good to have had that experience with family.
It's fantastic.
You've got a necklace that's something else. So like you kind of brushed it off, like, you know, my Dinkra symbol. Your necklace is something else, bro. That's a serious piece of hardware.
Which one you talking about? The one I got on, or a different one?
It's like a ram. Like I saw it.
Yeah.
It's like a ram or something. But like the chain's real long. Like you know, like you're from.
Yeah. So it's
So
my uncle. Yeah. My uncle is essentially the Ashanti king in Ghana, and you know, it's one of the more powerful positions in the whole country, even next to the president. And you know, having somebody in your family in that role is a big deal. And I remember I was in South Africa, and this artist, you know, I told you, you know, we were talking, and I didn't know he was an artist. We were just talking about art and, you know, my history and where my family was from. And, you know, I said, yeah, my uncle, the Ashanti king. And he says, what? And then he goes in the back and brings out this necklace, this gold necklace, which has a little baby ram on it. And, you know, it looks like Slick Rick. That's how big it was. And he was like, it'd be my honor to give it to you. I was like, I can't take this. And he was like, please, no, you have to have it. And so I was like, you know what, just take some cash. I gave him some cash and gave it to me. And it was the NBA Africa game. And we were supposed to wear like a designated polo or something. And I wore that with a Kente shirt because I was like, we're in Africa. It's the first time there's going to be the NBA All-Star game in Africa. Nah, I'm putting on. And I wore it, and people were like, man, this is the most beautiful thing we've ever seen. And the learning, when I showed my mom and dad what he gave me, my mom already knew what it was. She was like, they have a ram because rams is a sign of authority and power, but rams are also very humble at the same time. And so, seeing that, I was like, man, I've only worn it twice, and I always like keep it in the vault because again, it's special, but only on special occasions would I bring it out. But it's definitely a part of my history and heritage that I embrace the most and love it.
You had to pull a Nori moment. My man said his uncle is the king, son, and everybody just like was quiet. Like, wait, what? Like it's like coming to America. It's like he got his own money. He got his own money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard that part before. That's funny.
It's funny, Pop. When we were at JR's wedding, and we had some of the currency down there. When I saw Nanny, that lady, the warrior, our ancestor Nanny on the money, and all those other ancestors, I was like, wow. When you go to another country and you see the currency, it's beautiful. When are you going back? I'm sure at the GM, you're always in Africa, right? Recruiting and trying to find talent.
To an extent. Yeah, to an extent. But, the camp is supposed to happen in August. And, if the border is still closed in the next couple of weeks, then I'll probably have to cancel the camp for this year and focus on I'm postponing it or just moving it back to next year.
Yeah. Wow.
I told Heath that I saw a brother that like on one of these groups I'm a part of, like a Pan-African group on our WhatsApp, and just a guy in a village. Yeah, I think he's in Ghana. Yeah, guy in a village, and he's about 7'5" or something. He's super tall, and he's a car mechanic, young kid.
Yeah.
Car mechanic, just doing that, and like I'm just like, yo, he needs to meet somebody like you, and just like,
yeah. It's funny, man. You'll see that, like if you go to like South Sudan or Senegal,
right?
Like I remember there was the head of the NBA Africa sent me a picture. It was a guy. It was like I guess the janitor. Right. He was like fixing a basket, and the basket was on the ground, so it's the backboard. So just like this little rectangle you see there. And the guy had his arms open, and he could grab both ends of the backboard with his arms. Now, if anybody doesn't know that thing is like 7-8 feet wide, right. And he's just grabbing it, and he's not even playing basketball. He's the guy fixing things, and he was like 7 feet tall. Like so, you see that all the time on the continent. That's why the NBA is over there. That's why everybody's investing in that because they see the MVP, most improved player, some of the best players in the NBA are of African descent, and they want to make sure they don't miss out on that next one.
Yeah. There's another Hakeem Olajuwon over there, right?
For sure.
I can say, how difficult is it to like develop a player that like hasn't played college ball or any kind of ball at all, just has height and potential natural ability? How difficult is it to like develop someone?
I think, especially when it comes to African players, I don't think it's that difficult at all. Look at Pascal Siakam's story. Look at Joel Embiid's story. Look at Giannis Antetokounmpo. There's something in their blood or in their makeup that allows them to develop faster. They start the game late but develop faster. We saw how Giannis came into the league, how he looked, and then how he is now. He's one of the best players. He's arguably the best player in the NBA.
Greek.
And then you look at Joel Embiid, like how he looked as a junior in high school to how he is now is totally different. Pascal Siakam was, funny story, when I was at the Players Association, he was one of my rookies at rookie transition camp, and he wears 43 and I wore 44 at Toronto. And he was like, he comes up to me, he's like, man, they said I could be like a version of you. And I wasn't even that. I had a good time in Toronto, but I wasn't, nowhere near what Pascal Siakam has done. And the fact that he's telling me that we played alike at a young age, and he's, an NBA champion and now an NBA All-Star, that just shows how much he's developed in a short time. And it just speaks to what you're talking about, the development of players. If they have the resources and the infrastructure, they'll blossom.
Amazing. Dope. We got some questions in the chat, Heath.
Yes, yeah, because we gotta let this general manager get to work, man.
This is so good, though. You know what I mean? Like, we always have such amazing guests on, and I don't know, like, what it is about this platform, just like, brings it out of people. They're just like at home with us. So, like, we love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Pops, Global Brothers podcast was birthed last April, and we have over 30 shows and so many people who have just helped us build much. So we appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Which question you want to start with? There's a lot in here. We got to let this guy go.
Well, we always got to start with our favorite person, Trey Lou.
Trey Lou. Okay.
So she says, Pops, money and status seems to change the way people of color are treated. How has that experience been for you post NBA?
It sucks, but it runs the world. People, when you speak with somebody, they usually ask you what you do, or who you work for, and that's to determine the level of respect that they're going to give you. And it sucks that we do this. I'm sure we've all experienced it, or done, or have even done it before. But it's it sucks, but that's the case. We don't get a certain level of respect until we've reached a certain status. And, a lot of players in this generation have understood that. I understood that, knowing that if I'm able to get on the front office side, I'm in those rooms and I'm part of the process. And if I'm able to speak up in that situation, then I can use what level of respect I receive based on whatever status I have or whatever wealth I've been able to acquire. Although it's something that you should be given, regardless. But it sucks that that's the case. But for those who have those opportunities, that's why I always say it's our social responsibility to, do the most with those opportunities and reach back for others when we get there, because they're not going to be afforded that ability. So a guy called me, and it's the first time I've thought about it like this. He was talking about, you can't have a black CEO if you don't have a black intern. A lot of companies hire within. Now, his daughter, he's very self-aware and understood that his daughter was born into wealth. And, she could always go to the best schools and whatnot. And that internship that only pays $8 an hour for 20 hours a week in Salt Lake City, a black kid that's still paying off student loans, that can't live off $8 an hour for 20 hours a week, is probably not going to be able to take that internship. But on the flip side, his white daughter, who was born into privilege and can subsidize that with the money from her family, can do those jobs and have a couple of those things on her resume. And, she's already ahead of the game. Whereas, people of color are going to have to struggle and find ways to make ends meet or work 2 or 3 jobs to do so just to have that internship. And it's difficult, and this is not an even playing field. So, definitely feel like we have to have more of us in those situations to just give those opportunities to people who look like us.
Mm-hmm. And make it conducive so they can actually sustain that position.
For sure.
Wow.
We would be remiss if we didn't do this one last question, because it's very important, not just to basketball, but like obviously this brother touched a lot of people's lives, and it kind of started off like the crazy year that we're having of course, I'm talking about Kobe Bryant. How did that news kind of like affect you? Because I saw that you played against him, I think, in like a international game. Just like, what did he mean to you? And just like kind of let us in on that.
What I learned about Kobe was, now being in an executive position and having a bunch of young players, like seeing how distraught they were and how difficult that was for them, proved that, he was their modern day Jordan. These kids were 10, 15 years ago, that's who they were looking at. That's who they were copying. That's whose shot they were emulating. And, I just saw the tears, I saw the difficulty, and then I realized that, I realized just our experiences and, being glad that, they would play against him, guard him in the NBA and then at the Olympics too. It's tough to see because you never really are able to give people their flowers when they're here. And you realize how much of an impact he's had on the culture, the people, and the game itself is, it's tough. It was tough, and it's weird because someone said they had a picture of Kobe stepping out of a car, and it was like, this is how I hope 2021 begins, because it just doesn't seem like it just seems like a bad nightmare. Just everything is just happening, everything that's going on so far is like, man, this year has been difficult, and I think Kobe was was the first thing that kind of kicked it off, and with his daughter dying too, that being a father, that was the most difficult to endure. But it's good to see that he was loved. It's good to see that the impact he's had on the game, and just seeing guys like LeBron and the close friends that he had, and seeing those guys cry at his, when they paid respects to him in the game. That was pretty powerful to see his peers and grown men brought to tears and really struck because he passed away. So it was a difficult situation, still is, but I think the best way to honor those who are no longer with us is to keep their legacies alive and live the way they would have wanted us to live.
And even Michael Jordan said, he lost a little brother.
For sure. I can see that.
This guy's given us almost 2 hours, man. And, man, we really appreciate this, man. I'm going to hit you offline in a couple of days and check in with you. I'm really interested in the work that you're doing in Ghana. Ghana will be the place where I will live, okay? I'm putting it out there in the universe. That's a place where I will live and I will be. Trust me.
Thanks everybody for joining us. This was absolutely amazing. We're gonna be hitting you up for sure, brother. I feel like we bonded. Now I know the King's nephew. You know what I'm saying? As we always say at this time, live global and prosper. Peace.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you guys for having me. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good one.
Peace.
Check us out on YouTube, Global Brothers Podcast, and please subscribe and share and continue to support good content.
Tell everybody.
Mr. Worldwide.